start this meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Give Spencer a call.
Peanut butter, that's a breakfast item, right, Mike? So they qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hey Spencer, this is Rochelle. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yep.
Morning, Spencer. We're just opening the meeting, so I'll start with consideration of the agenda for today. Not that I'm aware of.
I'll make a motion for the agenda as printed.
Support it.
A motion from Helmer, support from DeBoer to approve the February 11 agenda as provided. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. We had minutes provided from our January 28 meeting. Interest in approval of those minutes by anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion for approval by Helmers, support from Loring. Any discussion concerning the January 28 minutes? Without discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. And we will move on now to branch 152 and 152-178 construction project update. Is this in additional stuff to everything you've sent us, Spencer?
Yeah. Just want to first provide a quick update on construction for the board and more things just today. So throughout the month of January, the contractor continued to work on site, and they were able to lay pipe. They had to pull some frost up, obviously, but they had conditions that they could put pipe in. So they continued to install pipe up until basically the very end of the project. There's about 100 feet left at the end with a road crossing and some utilities that they cannot cross in the frost. So they essentially have installed almost all the pipe, about, like I said, 100 feet left, and they finished laying that pipe on January 29th. And then the following week, which would have been last week, they continued with a bunch of their crush and bury work where they were crush and burying the old tile and then connecting all those private tile into the new main through that stretch. And then they continued that work through last week, through the end of last week, like the 7th of February. And in addition to all that, on the 31st of January, we were on site to do additional post-construction televising of that new pipe with our pipe camera, and did get that report sent over just yesterday. Generally, the portion of installed pipe that was televised there on the 31st looked pretty good. There are a few minor areas that will require some repair work, but nothing that I would say is out of the ordinary or nothing major for sure. Just a few minor things that will get documented and then included on the contractor's punch list. So that was good to see. At this point, we've got probably about 2/3 of all the pipe televised. Yep.
Do you mind elaborating what those minor things are?
Yeah, sure. So one of them was like where they have like a lateral tile connection going into the main, where they use the fitting of the tight fitting onto the main, and then it's seated in place. And then sometimes what happens with like backfill or settling is those will pop out of place. And so there were a couple of those that had shifted, and you can see it from the inside of the pipe that they had shifted and popped out of place. And they don't provide any, imminent concerns, but long term they should be repaired so they're sealed up correctly. So those they'll just have to dig up and fix. And then there was one area of pipe deflection that was just marginal. It was right around like 7%, which is kind of the cutoff. So we're going to have them dig that up and see what the backfill looks like there. And then the last was just, we did have some sand and gravel that had gotten into the pipe and settled that they'll have to, I would assume they do it via jetting. They'll have to get that out of the pipe as well. So
that deflection, the picture where it has kind of that blue shaded area?
Yeah, yep, and I think all throughout, there was maybe one or two spots so far that were over our 7% cutoff, and they were just barely, they were like 7.1. So overall, when it comes to deflection, the pipe has looked really pretty good. And I know in those two areas that it was kind of marginal, we had some really bad soils that we were working through when they were installing there, so it's not as surprising, but we're going to have them dig up those areas that are over 7 just to see what the backfill looks like, and then if it is short anywhere, make sure it gets recompacted and filled in. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So at this point, we have about 2/3 of all the pipe televised. We usually let it sit at least 30 days before televising it. So this last stretch that's been installed here in December and January, we're going to televise here in early March. Assuming that looks good, then we'll be able to finalize our punch list from that. So overall, looking pretty good, but just a few repair areas there that'll have to get addressed. So I guess to date, nearly all the pipe is installed, nearly all the crush and bury work is done. Probably the biggest thing then is some of the site cleanup and grading work that just cannot be done in the frost right now that needs to be done. And so at this point in time, the contractor has completed essentially everything that they could in the current site conditions with the frost. And so they are pulling their equipment back to the shop, I think actively this week to get it worked on and cleaned up over the winter here. And then their intention, they've told us, is to come back as soon as possible in the spring and do that grading and cleanup work and the last of the pipe installation, which is like maybe just a day's work for the pipe, and then some connections that they gotta do, and then that grading and cleanup work. So that's kind of the update on progress and where construction sits today and what the intention is. So we are at the point where they are done working for the time being, but we would expect them to come back based on what they've told us as soon as the site is fit to go in the spring. So I guess with that, before we move to the pay app, is there any questions on kind of construction status or update or anything? If not, we'll move on to the pay app item. The pay app is really for work completed there in January through last week, first week in February. Majority of all this pay app is the remainder of the 24-inch pipe, and then the majority or nearly all of the 15-inch pipe that was installed there this last month. Additionally, some of the crush and bury work that was completed, and then those tile connections that were completed as well this month. So one thing to note is that we are not paying for all of the topsoil work at the top end of the project, obviously, because there is still frost and things, and this will all need additional work in the spring and graded and cleaned up. So we're not recommending paying for all that topsoil work at this point in time. So I guess with that, that's kind of the summary of what the pay app is. We have been on site to review all this work and would recommend payment. So I guess with that, I'll entertain any questions, or if the board would like to make a motion on the pay application number 7.
Questions or discussion or interest in action on the pay app, gentlemen?
Are we gonna hold some back, Spencer?
Yeah, so I think, Jerry, what you're referring to is like for any damages. So the contract does include 10% retainage, and I asked Brian Young about this, about holdbacks, and he said that as long as we felt that the retainage was adequate to cover any potential damages, we should be fine. As of right now, our retainage is, if we were to approve this pay app, our retainage would be about $124,000. So in my opinion, that would be plenty adequate to cover anything. So that would be kind of what we're holding back at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Waiting a motion for pay application that's been presented.
That's 112,000.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
A motion from Schulte, support from Helmers for approval of pay application number 7 for $112,693 and 20 cents. Any further discussion, questions for Spencer? Hearing none, those in favor of approval of the pay app signify with aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We have approval for that, Spencer. Next item is the approval or consideration of the construction completion notice that you provided us with.
Yeah, so this was drafted by Brian Young, and then I provided some information and edits to this based on what he had drafted. So essentially, this was the notice we discussed in previous session. Really what we're trying to do here is put our expectations in writing to the contractor and make sure that we're aligned with what we expect to be done. So I feel like this is a very positive thing that we should be sending out. I think it just puts, like I said, everything in writing and clarifies it. We did list out remaining work prior to substantial completion, and then noted in here that we'll be providing a full punch list once the televising is complete. I'd say probably the big thing will be what we want to put in there for the date. We had put in there for now the April 4th date, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room before any spring planting. I think, in my opinion, we want to set a date that's reasonable but aggressive, and I think that date accomplishes that, but certainly open to input from the board, what we want to put in there. So that was all I had on the notice, but open to any questions or discussion on it.
If approved, will you be providing a copy to Dickinson County just to notify them or keep them informed?
Yeah, yep, we can definitely do that, yep.
Or we can too, I just want to know who should or will.
Yep, we can copy them on it, yep.
Okay. Interest in approval of the letter provided concerning construction completion notice?
Motion.
Motion for approval of the letter by Loring.
Support.
Support from Helmers. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, those in favor of approval signify with aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. You have your approval, Spencer. And the last item we have identified is discuss branch 152 and 152-178 crop damages and set 2024 damage prices.
Yeah, so on this, hopefully you've seen, I sent over the draft of what we put together for the damages that we had documented from the 2024 growing season. Yes, first off, just to clarify, these are all specific to 2024 damages that we had, planned for. Originally, when we had approved the project, we had planned for approximately 37 acres of crop damage at $1,000 an acre, so $37,000 budgeted for the district to pay crop damages. Of these damages, I think all of them except for one small area, we would recommend, that when the time comes, we're obviously not approving any of these today, we're just discussing them, but when the time comes, the district would pay for these, except for one area where we do have documented that the contractor went outside the work limits without approval, and the landowner had damages there. And so all the other areas, which total right about 33 acres of damage from the 2024 growing season. I guess what I wanted to discuss with the board, so we can talk about setting prices for, corn and soybean damages and everything. what a lot of these damages are areas in the field where the landowners did not plant because we were out there last spring and it staked out, the work limits, so the landowners didn't plant these areas of the field. And so wanted to discuss with the board the feeling for how we want to set a price for these areas that, I'll just call them fallow, the areas that were not planted. I know some of the areas the landowners had put fertilizer down, but did not plant a crop there, and setting a price for payment of those, I guess we'll call fallow areas. And then in addition, we had some grassland areas as well that were damaged or disturbed from construction as well. So I guess all that to say, we did pull some information from typically what we use is like Iowa State University has the Ag Decision Maker, which provides kind of expected production costs on a yearly basis. So what we came up with, pulling off of there from the 2024, was for corn production was roughly $1,000 an acre, soybean production roughly $700 an acre, and then what we seen in the past for like a fallow would be something to include roughly like a cash grant equivalent plus a little cost for fertilizer, so maybe something in the 350 to 400, 450 range an acre, and then similar for a waterway with any damages resulting in that $350 to $400 an acre range. So I guess those are just numbers we pulled from Iowa State. Just wanted to throw them out there. I think it would be, my recommendation would be that the board does take action to set pricing for 2024. That way we can, when we send a landowner or letter to the landowners, we can say these are the price per acre that the board has set for these different damages. And then if the landowner feels that they have more damage than that, they can document that and submit that claim for additional. It just makes it a lot cleaner and easier if we set a price rather than having kind of every landowner claim a different price. It can get kind of complicated that way. So I guess first I'll just stop there and ask if the board has any questions or what thoughts the board would have on paying those damages or setting those prices for those damages.
Spencer, the fallow land, what are you talking about there?
Yeah, so these are just areas that, go ahead.
Could have it been planted, or what? Was that ground that's never been planted?
It could have been planted, but we had sent a letter to the landowners prior to construction letting them know, and then we marked the work limits, and we had recommended they don't plant it because we obviously expected construction to happen in those areas in 2024. So it was not planted, and really some may have put some fertilizer down, but that would be the only input then. Otherwise, it was just left idle essentially.
Yeah, but isn't there some value on if they could have planted land there or corn there?
Yeah, and that's the discussion I wanted to have. If the board feels that way, then we could definitely pay the full damage amount for those two. Really, it's kind of up to the board on what you feel comfortable paying. It is like I said, we had budgeted $1,000 an acre, so it would be within what we had budgeted for the project to pay the full damage amount, even if those areas weren't planted. I think that would be reasonable.
But they wouldn't have had the full input costs to attain that
Correct.
1,000 acres,
So
right?
they still went through a lot this
I
year.
agree, but
I think we should
That-
give them the 1,000. My opinion is give them the 1,000 for that too,
I agree.
because it doesn't amount to that many acres anyway, does it?
Yeah, so in total, fallow was a good chunk of it. In total, it was like 33 acres roughly for 2024 damages.
Yeah, but the fallow.
Sure. It was a fair amount of it. I would have to look at the exact numbers. I don't have that broken apart on the spreadsheet yet, but it was a decent chunk of it. But I do think that'd be reasonable. The district has it budgeted, and kind of to your sentiment, Jerry, it was a rough construction year for them. Obviously, I know that it would probably go a long way to have that full damage amount paid. It has been budgeted, so it may be easier just to set that damage price too. And it's kind of a one price across all and move on. I think that would be perfectly reasonable.
can you refresh my memory? Were we pleased with the oversight of the area and the weed control throughout, or?
Yeah, there was areas that definitely the weed control was not done as well as it should have been by the contractor, and we did document that. That would be, my recommendation for that would be that if a landowner has a claim for that damage, we'll encourage them to make that claim, and then if they make that claim, we could then claim that against the contractor, with the documentation for the weed control, so.
My thought is if we just go with the full price, does that offset
Oh,
the
sure,
weed
yep.
issue?
Yeah, it would, yeah, it might help, yep.
And are you suggesting using the budgeted amount? I thought you were saying that was the ISU Ag decision maker rates that you were listing, but those are what you budgeted?
We just budgeted a flat $1,000 across all the acres for simplification, but the ISU rate for corn does come out to right around 1,000 as well, so those are about the same. So I do think, to simplify things, I would be in favor of just a standard price across all the damaged acres. I think that would be perfectly reasonable.
I agree with that.
I do too.
Okay, so what I would recommend is then, my recommendation would be that the board would just make a motion to set all 2024 crop damage for the project at $1,000 an acre damage. That would be my recommendation.
There is no record of what fields were planted corn and what were planted beans, or?
We do have that, I guess. So if you wanted to set the price for corn and beans, we could do that, yep.
I'd make a motion, we just go with $1,000 an acre.
And I'll support that.
Motion by Schulte, support from Helmers to set the damage prices at $1,000 per acre, likely around 33 acres total. Any further discussion? I think in the interest of the rest of the district, it would probably be good to identify the difference between corn and beans as to what would have been planted there, but my opinion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of that rate signify with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Aye. We have accomplished what it shows on the agenda. Did you have anything further, Spencer?
No, I don't think so, other than just, we'll keep the board in the loop if anything changes, but it'll probably be a little bit, I'd imagine until sometime in March until we have any more action or anything happen. But we will get the letter out to the landowners with the 2024 damages here within hopefully the next week, so.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yep. Thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Interested in
Thanks, Spencer.
adjournment, gentlemen?
Yep. Bye.
Motion by Loring, support from DeVore to adjourn the Drainage District meeting. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, we would next enter into the regular board meeting. We did open our drainage meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you guys would like us to follow what was printed on the agenda and open with the pledge, we can do it again. But I think we'll move on to roll call. Mr. Loring?
Here.
Mr. Schulte?
Here.
Mr. Helmers?
Here.
Mr. DeBoer?
Here.
I am here. We would first look at the agenda for today for our regular meeting.
If nothing added, I would accept that agenda.
Second.
Motion by Helmers, support from Loring for approval of today's agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We next have minutes from February 4 for review and consideration for approval.
I'll make a motion for the minutes.
Motion for approval of the minutes by DeBoer, support from Loring. Further discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, and those in favor of approval signify with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And we are past 9:05, so we'll jump to department heads. Rochelle, want to start with the auditor?
Sure. We've been busy with passports. Chrissy, Chantry, and I we all completed our passport training that we have to do every year. Just working on budgets. Chantry's working on family farm and egg line credits, and just keeping up with everything else that we have to do.
I thought you were saying you all got your passports and you were planning.
Oh yeah, I have one. I'm ready to skip this country. If I can get my husband to go with me, I would be gone.
Sheriff?
We're doing some firearms training this week. And, on Thursday, we got another, Lakes Co-op employment meeting again to see what we're gonna do, open up the testing again. And on February 20th at 11:45, the Attorney General is gonna be at the Sheriff's Office. And any of you that want to, come down and talk to her or ask her questions about anything, you're more than welcome to show up. She'll be there from 11:45 to 12:45, and she's on a pretty tight schedule, so. But you're welcome to show up. You can talk to her about anything.
11:45 to what?
12:45.
All right. Conservation?
Trout Fest was held on February 1st, and even though it was super, super windy that day, it was out of good direction, and it was actually pretty nice down the pond. We had about 140 people show up to that, so pretty good turnout again this year. We have scheduled our Hunter Ed online field day for March 29th. So that is, I think, yeah, it's the last Saturday in March. You have to have the online portion of the class done before you show up, and it's usually about 3 hours out at Willow Creek, and you can go on your merry way. And then, I guess the other big thing is just, we've been working on the cabin. The walls are textured and now painted. We've been waiting patiently, not really so patiently, for the material to show up for us to start on the ceiling, and we have found out coming at 10 o'clock this morning, so we should be able to get a start on that this week.
Reporter.
Okay, with the winter games over at the lakes, we found out that, side-by-sides and ATVs, they're supposed to have slow moving vehicle signs on them. And the DNR wasn't aware of it, but when they made it street legal, then that went to the DOT. And they were enforcing it, but I don't think anybody got tickets because nobody really knew about it yet, but. It's supposed to be like A size, not the little big ones, so that's something new if you're on the hard surface roads. And boat renewals, snowmobiles, they're all coming in strong, so.
All right, engineer?
So on the funding update, we've got some of our reimbursements now through the FEMA portal system, so we're looking to get some done at some point. We got the initial emergency measures, which was the signs that we had to put out during the first few days of the event, and then the two major bridge repairs. One of them, the one downstream from Poet, not the one that was washed out, but the other one, and then the four-way bridge. Those took a significant amount of restoration and riprap, so we got those into the system. Capital improvement projects, the A30, that's the road coming out of Slippery here that had to get kicked a year because we didn't have enough money in our FM account at the time. That's going on the DOT letting this week. So we'll see what that's going to be. F10 bridge, that's south of Sibley here. That one is in next fiscal year, FY26. However, we've got an opportunity to bundle it with other projects as part of a CHP federal grant, so we may be able to get that paid for by that grant as opposed to our own bridge fund. So we're working on getting that. And that's actually how the E6 bridge here west of Sidley was done on the outskirts of town. It was one of those types of grant systems. Other than that, equipment-wise, our tracked excavator, which was damaged during the flood event, which we've kind of been pushing through the FEMA system, now it looks like ICAP is actually going to cover that as a comprehensive claim. So that would actually be better for us because they'll, like we had all the equipment from the fire, they'll cover pretty much 100% of the cost of replacement versus 80% like FEMA would. So it's looking better on that. That's all I got.
Treasurer?
Well, beginning of the year, taxes are coming in again, so usually the end of December and the beginning, we get a little bit more of those, so they'll be coming in. Taxes are due March 31st. I just also want to let you know what's our fee increase for our titles, liens, and 5%. We get an extra $10 for each one that we do. In January, we brought in $2,120, so I thought that was pretty good for our first month, because some of the purchase dates were from December, so that was a nice increase to see.
Attorney's office?
Well, we have a felony trial on the minutes of testimony coming up. Not this coming Monday, but the following one. Actually, I believe that's Tuesday, but that will not be a jury trial. It'll be tried at the court. That's an operating while intoxicated causing serious injury case from 2023. So after some delays, we're looking forward to getting that one taken care of. Have several juvenile court hearings coming up, including a few ongoing complex matters, including an Indian Child Welfare Act case that has been keeping us pretty busy, at least when it comes up for hearing. Besides that, it does not look like we'll be moving forward with an intern at this time, but I also would note that I've possibly identified somebody who might be able to fill the role of a part-time victim witness coordinator, and we can talk more about that as we have the opportunity. Besides that, I don't have any other updates to offer.
All right.
Chantry has to give an update too, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Did Rochelle do one already?
No.
Oh.
We're
Well.
gonna compare.
We're gonna compare, oh, okay.
You always like having the floor, don't you?
No, not really. I'm just working on ag land and family farm stuff now that has to be submitted to the state by April 1st. I know Rochelle's busy working on budget stuff with everyone. We have an election training thing we have to go to Storm Lake for 2.5 days coming up. I can't remember the dates of that for sure, but we're trying to find coverage for the office, or if nothing else, then we'll have to close it because that's the only time they offer it for our new system updates or whatever. So. Yes.
You should tell Rochelle you should come in and give the updates every time. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all. If I look at the list right, I think Kevin provided the treats.
Well, Stephanie did.
So they're
He
safe.
delivered them. And I didn't wait, I already tried one, so I would recommend them.
I told you that earlier, if you're not diabetic, after you eat one, you will
You
be.
may be. All right,
I can't have my whole.
help yourselves. Would you take the rest of them? Yeah, okay.
Because I'll eat them all.
All right. Okay. Our next item on the agenda would be to move back up to the top there and consider pay increase for county attorney's legal assistant, victim witness coordinator. Further discussion, gentlemen?
Have you thought what you'd like to see?
I know what Nolan and I requested the other day, 85 of
The deputy auditor's salary, 85% would be the max that a deputy auditor, deputy treasurer, or deputy recorder could be paid with respect to the elected official's salary. So, in other words, in Iowa, the maximum amount, say your first or second deputy auditor, treasurer, or recorder could be paid is 85% of that elected official's salary. If that is too much of a jump in your opinion, what I would suggest the alternative is that we do what was done for Lyon's second most senior legal assistant, who handles fine collection, magistrate court, and juvenile court. When I discussed with Lyon the terms of me becoming county attorney in Lyon, what was agreed to was that beginning this coming fiscal year, the legal assistant who handles fine collection, magistrate court, and juvenile court would earn 81% of what the deputy auditor, first deputy auditor, first deputy treasurer, and first deputy recorder make. And the following year would go to 82%, the following year 83, 84, and then 85, until that legal assistant earned 85% of what those deputies earn. And that would also include the cost of living increase or the annual salary increase that is paid to other deputies, clerks, etc. in the courthouse. I think that's a fair way to do things because that would account for Elizabeth's increasing experience as the years go on. And it would gradually bring her to a compensation level that I think would be fair given the eventual experience she would gain.
How many years' experience do you have right now?
I started in 2022, June of 2022.
I guess to the point of the deputy within the other offices, those offices, they're required to assume the role should the elected officer not be there. This one is different in that sense.
Yes.
She's not gonna be the attorney?
And
I'm sure if I had the license, I could probably handle it, but.
And you're right about that, Jason, but Elizabeth also makes a good point. The reality is that in a lot of county attorneys' offices, the legal assistants are the ones doing most all of the heavy lifting when it comes to keeping things running, doing the paperwork, or at least most of it. It's kind of a underrated adage in law offices, whether government or private, that there are only a few things that an attorney can do that a legal assistant or paralegal can't. Elizabeth can't sign pleadings or legal forms. She can't make legal argument in court, and she can't give legal advice to county officials or make, statements of professional statement to the court. Besides that, Elizabeth can do pretty much everything that I can do. And because of the fact that she's been in a position where she's been on her own these past few weeks especially, but to a greater degree the past few months, and probably will be for some time until a new county attorney is found, she is carrying a heavier load. And I point out that the simple reality that I've come to realize of the Osceola County Attorney's Office is, as long as there's just one legal assistant, and even if there's a part-time victim witness coordinator, the legal assistant is alone in doing so many things that they are acting in a lot of ways beyond what the average legal assistant would do. I'm not going to say that they're acting as county attorney because that wouldn't be legally or ethically proper. And Elizabeth and I have put into place systems to make sure that even if I'm in court in Lyon, she calls me or communicates with me via Microsoft Teams to get my approval before filing things, especially things that include substantive pleadings to the court, like matters of argument to the court about the facts of the case. That being said, I recognize that she's not an attorney and has less experience than some of the folks who have gotten salary increases in, say, Lyon or in other counties that we've talked to, like O'Brien or Dickinson. That's why I would recommend that we slowly step up her salary. Reality is that even if you guys decide you want to hire a part-time victim witness coordinator, even if it gets grant funded, even if we find out a way to share that person with another county and that's a workable arrangement, Elizabeth is still going to take on proportionally more than county attorneys' offices that have 2 or more full-time legal assistants. That's just a reality, and that's something that makes this job in Osceola County that Elizabeth currently holds more difficult than in other counties. What I would also say is, while I'm not going to speak for Elizabeth or her future, we've been very lucky in the 7.5 years that I've worked for Osceola County to have 3 really good legal assistants. Obviously, things weren't always perfect, but between having Mitzi, Jace, and Elizabeth, we've gotten lucky 3 times in a row having really good legal assistants. I wouldn't feel comfortable working as the interim for Lyon, then the interim for Osceola, and potentially continuing on as your interim until you find somebody if we didn't have somebody who was experienced, if we didn't have somebody who was able to step up and take on a greater load, and I think that deserves more compensation. And I think that even once you find a new county attorney, even if that person is experienced, they will have to adjust to the realities of Osceola County. We have had in the past several years, again, as I say, multiple major felony child sex abuse cases. I tried 4 in the period of just 7 months. We have at least 2 more in the pipeline. We have an active homicide investigation. It's the first one that could potentially result in murder charges in Osceola County in over 40 years. These things take up vastly disproportionate amounts of time that make it more difficult for legal assistants and attorneys to focus on the day-to-day high volume. Right now we're down here talking, magistrate court's going on. We'll go upstairs and Elizabeth and I will deal with trying magistrate court cases if needed. On the first Tuesday of every month, we often have a meeting here. We will also have juvenile court on the first Tuesday of every month. We have court 4 Mondays out of the month for felony matters and misdemeanor matters. We already have a pretty high volume of court to deal with for any county attorney's office, but the continued high volume and independent nature of what Elizabeth does means that we should take steps to make sure that we provide a salary that encourages people like Elizabeth who are good legal assistants to remain employees of Osceola County. Because people like Elizabeth, just like Jace and Mitzi have the opportunity to go work elsewhere. And we would rather avoid that if we can by compensating them fairly and making them feel as though they're valued. And that's kind of ultimately at the heart of what I see as the reason to adopt the salary increase structure that I'm talking about when I look at the medium and long term here. So that's what I'd encourage you guys to do. I understand that saying let's jump her to 85% is a bit of an ask, and that's why I suggest the graduated increase. And yes, I get that she can't step in if tomorrow I were to get hit by a bus and you guys would have to find a new county attorney to be your interim. Or if you guys were to decide you no longer wanted me as interim. I understand that. But the reality is that day in, day out, she does a lot of the work of what a county attorney's office would do if there were no legal assistants. And we really, at this point, do not want to be in a situation where there are no legal assistants, especially not ones that are trained and experienced, that had the opportunity to learn from the person who came before them. I've been in a situation where we had to train a legal assistant in how the county attorney's office works from scratch without the benefit of their predecessor. It's not a fun time. It's not an efficient time for the office. It's not a good time for the functioning of the office. Pardon me. And adopting this increased structure would help avoid that.
I'd also like to add that I am bilingual. So we do have a grade of defendants that sometimes don't speak English that I try to work through, obviously. I have had some offices request my assistance, and that's fine as long as I'm not in trial or something like that. I'm always willing to help out.
I'd say that probably between 20% to a third, would you say, of our defendants either do not speak English well or do not speak English at all. And if we don't have somebody who's bilingual, what happens is we have to use something called the language line to interpret. The language line is great in a way because you can call up a number and they can have an interpreter for any one of 100+ languages, but it's very hit or miss because even with Spanish, the second most commonly spoken language in this country, you oftentimes get somebody who either can't hear because of connection problems, which is crazy, but it's true even in this day and age, or you get somebody who's not as competent in Spanish as you would hope, and certainly oftentimes they're not as competent at speaking Spanish as Elizabeth is, or they simply can't understand the dialect of Spanish that person is speaking because they're not there listening to them, reading their lips, and trying to use alternate phrases to communicate. And that person oftentimes is not very well versed in legal English, which Elizabeth is well versed in because of her experience. So having somebody like Elizabeth who is there when somebody comes to the window and doesn't understand what a form means, or they don't understand what an initial appearance is very important. And now, granted, there are limits to that, certainly. She can't go into court and translate during a magistrate proceeding because we can't have somebody that's in the county attorney's office translating during a legal proceeding for obvious conflict of interest reasons. But what I would say is, even in line yesterday, we had somebody come to the door who wanted somebody to explain a payment plan for him. And not only was the legal assistant who handles payment plans out sick for the day, that legal assistant does not speak Spanish. I speak functional enough Spanish to explain to this person, hey, I'm also working as the interim county attorney in Osceola. If you come to Osceola County tomorrow at about 11 o'clock, my legal assistant in Osceola can explain to you what this Lyon County payment plan form means. Even though that form is written in Spanish, this guy needed somebody to explain it to him because a lot of these folks can't read very well, or they're very nervous about signing a legal form even when it's in Spanish. And somebody like Elizabeth can explain to them what that means. And also, I'd just throw this out there. Again, I'm not going to speak for Elizabeth or her future, but right now, she could go and take a course that would be less than 6 months, certify as a grade 1 interpreter for the courts of the state of Iowa, and make as much or more in her first year, probably significantly more, being a full-time court translator in Northwest Iowa. There are only 2 certified Spanish interpreters who work in this judicial subdistrict. And I know for a fact that they made more than she makes this year in the past year. One of them is a Spanish professor at Northwestern, and that's his side gig. And he makes more than she made last year, at least the last time I checked. So you're talking about somebody that has experience both as a legal assistant and has a really valuable skill around here, which is speaking Spanish. My Spanish is better than pretty much any county attorney I know in Northwest Iowa for a number of reasons, but it's not good enough to do the kind of work that Elizabeth can do in Spanish. It's just not. And I also don't feel comfortable as the county attorney standing there in front of somebody representing these things to somebody when it is better if a legal assistant explains those things to that person and there's that professional distance. So that's a really valuable skill that Elizabeth brings to the table. Jace spoke okay Spanish. She spoke Spanish about the same level as I did. Mitzi didn't. They were both great at other things. But Elizabeth has a skill that we were really lucky to get a hold of. So that's another reason I'd say you should consider taking this strategy and gradually stepping up her salary to that of a deputy auditor or treasurer.
I guess my thoughts in much of that, I don't doubt that her value. And I think when we advertised and hired, we said bilingual was a preference. So I think that consideration was given initially. I guess I'm thinking we just didn't do good 28Es in sharing. If it put weight on the office that then requires additional pay there, then that should have been factored into the agreement when we were offering our county attorney or when we were engaging in a shared agreement to compensate the attorney. 'Cause I don't know that changing the salary going forward because of that situation is the right approach. And the last point I'd make is that I think we might be better off considering another part-time or position within the office to handle fine collection and victim witness coordination duties to allow this position to remain legal assistant. And I guess to me, that is probably my preference as to addressing the situation.
And
Both
just
come with
for-
financial needs, but I think it covers the whole of the office better. But
And just for information, that issue with the person coming to the door in line, that was the first time that has happened since I've been interim, really. That we've offered Elizabeth's help. I don't expect that that would be a day in, day out thing, that line would be asking us for that. And also, just for regarding information about hiring potentially a part-time victim witness coordinator, I've identified somebody that will graduate from college in May. I don't know if they would be willing to serve in multiple counties, but I know that they have the experience necessary, even as somebody that's just been an intern. I'm not gonna, use names or pledge their services or say that they're willing to do that, but there's somebody who's a potential candidate, but they're also not immediately available. So there's somebody out there. There may be other people out there. Obviously, I would like to advertise for the position, but regardless of what you guys do, I think Elizabeth deserves more.
I would like some time where just the board can sit and visit about it.
Okay.
And get different ideas.
we're only gonna be able to do that in a public meeting, so we can't really
Yeah.
create that opportunity.
And you can discuss her performance and compensation in a later closed session if you want to. You would obviously have to take any action, if any, that you would take in an open session. You could potentially have this discussion again in a closed session to talk more about the specifics of what you want to do and see if that there's, some agreement, or at least, indication of agreement among the board members at a later meeting in closed session, come out of closed session and take action if you would like to. That's an option you guys have. Also, you have this on the agenda for today. If there's a decision that you can come to, then there's also that as an option that you would have.
I guess I was looking at the numbers and I don't think I wanna jump that much that fast. That's just my thought.
You mean to 81%?
Yeah.
And I understand that that would be a jump in salary. I don't think that's out of line, given the experience and the skills she brings to the table. But again, we're asking for an increase on top of what she would be getting anyways. And I understand this is a negotiated salary discussion. But, I'm here to advocate for Elizabeth getting more because I think that's fair.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do something, but I just can't see jumping that much that fast.
I would go back to the history of it, that for many years, the engineer's office manager and the legal assistant were at the same salary. Not that many years ago, we were of the opinion or convinced that the engineer's office manager should be paid more than what had been continuing or had been going. So I think there's room to say, yeah, this position probably is deserving of more than where it had been at as well, in light of that. I would be content or open to a $2,000 bump beyond the 3.5% that shows in the budget. It would still be lower than the engineer's office manager, but it would be getting closer.
I guess for right now, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
But our recovery fund keeps going down. I can't see where we reward somebody for having that go down. That's my opinion.
And I don't disagree with there, but I don't know that I am comfortable saying it should be the legal assistant's job.
Well, it's always been.
And I would also point out that it's gotten harder over the past 7.5 years to recover fines. When I first started here, if somebody missed a payment or didn't pay, we set it for a show cause hearing. If they didn't provide a sufficient legal reason the first time, or didn't show, it would be continued once. If they didn't provide a sufficient legal reason for non-payment of fines, the second time or didn't show, a warrant would be issued for their arrest. That law has changed twice since I've been county attorney here. That is no longer an option for us, and judges openly deny, and I wouldn't say look with scorn upon those requests, because that would be too much to say, but they simply remind us that that is no longer the statutory scheme, or to put it simply, that is no longer the law. So it is harder to collect fines now. It requires more input of time. It requires access to databases that we need to probably look at spending money on if we're going to have somebody dedicated to this. And I think we need to have somebody dedicated to this or working towards doing this if we're going to have greater fine collection recovery. And if we look at victim witness coordinator part-time versus a part-time fine collector, or we can't hire somebody full-time to do it, there is someone who wants to work as an intern in Northwest Iowa. It's an undergrad this summer who could begin and try and do that and see where we can go with recovery. But it's not the same as it was when I started in terms of fine collection. If you don't have somebody that's dedicated to it full-time or part-time, it becomes more difficult. And I don't think Elizabeth should be punished. I understand that the numbers have gone down. That's fair to say. That's hard to deny. But when you look at changing legal assistance multiple times, when you look at the volume of cases that we've had, I mean, candidly, the major felony case volume in Osceola County versus in Lyon County is much higher. When you have major felonies that require dozens of hours from a legal assistant for each case, and sometimes hundreds of hours from a county attorney, you're talking about cases where when those people go to prison, they don't have fines because they're serving 17.5-year minimum sentences, 25-year max sentences, sometimes stacked sentences. Those people are functionally never going to be able to repay the statutory fines that are involved. Sometimes there is no statutory fine for those offenses. And we don't control how many child sex abuse cases and how many violent crime cases we have in this county. So that's also a reason why it's changed.
Would you have any input on if we were to consider, as I said earlier, an additional position to handle victim witness coordination and fine collection? Separating that, did you mention an intern possibility to kind of review if that's a long-term approach? What kind of number would you suggest budgeting if we were to consider that?
If we were to consider hiring a part-time victim witness coordinator position, wherein that person would be solely dedicated to victim witness coordinator duties, one of the variables involved is whether or not we could get federal funding under the Violence Against Women Act. There is some uncertainty as to whether or not those grants will continue, and there is some uncertainty in our federal courts as to whether or not the president's recent attempt to freeze that funding, among many other funding streams, is constitutional. It is uncertain what the outcome of that process will be. In other words, we don't know if the VAWA grant funding, which has been available for multiple years, will continue. In places where it is funded at least through the end of this fiscal year, if not into the next year, depending on if counties have budgeted for it. However, regardless of that, to attract somebody and to be, I would say, even remotely competitive, offering a full-time or a part-time position, pardon me, I would think that you would need to offer somewhere in the $26,000 to $30,000 range, given that you would not be paying that person benefits. I would think that if we were able to find a way to share somebody between counties and we were able to work out benefits for that person so that they would essentially have full-time equivalent work, that could be a more realistic path towards getting somebody and being competitive. Obviously, that would require discussion with other counties. I would present that perhaps Lyon County would be interested in that, but I don't have any commitments from board members. However, That is not certain, and I would say that you should plan on that $26,000 to $30,000 range for a victim witness coordinator. I'd also add that's probably a pretty good investment given the continual stream of major felony, violent crime prosecutions we've had in this county over the past couple of years. You could experiment with making that a more than 20 hours a week pure part-time position, and something that's sort of a hybrid where that person would work 30 hours a week if it would work, and then try and have that person also do fine collection. There's also, like I said, somebody who's an undergrad who is interested in doing an internship in Northwest Iowa this summer. He had originally requested to work in Lyon County. I don't know at this time if that's something that's going to be available, because we have other interns in Lyon County who are more senior than that individual who wants the internship. There's the potential that we could discuss with that person coming on this summer and working alongside Elizabeth and a potential victim witness coordinator, and that person could be an intern who did fine collection, and we could see how it goes. And then at the end of the summer, decide whether or not we wanted to account for that person going back to college by increasing the duties of a victim witness coordinator, or hiring somebody part-time as a fine collector, or hiring somebody part-time as a fine collector, or making the victim witness coordinator plus fine collection duties one full-time position. There's some options here. It's flexible. It depends on what people we have available and what other counties might want to do with us. But at the very least, I think that in terms of making the office more efficient, it's important to hire at least a part-timer and make a serious offer to hire a part-timer who could do at least the victim witness coordinator position. And that person, as needed, could also fill in when they're here for whatever hours they're here making the calls that need to happen. There's a database that essentially, in the data collection world, it's called scraping, that scrapes available public tax filing and employment documents and gives us data about people who have jobs who might be in our fine collection database. In the fine collection world, they call that the low-hanging fruit, because those are people who have active fines that can be collected that we would then know have employment and probably can pay. And those are the first people you contact and get in touch with and put on your radar. And if we had somebody that had more time to make those calls, and I can get the name of that database and figure out if it would cost us anything, we could also then potentially make progress in collecting fines that would otherwise slip by. So there are options. I'd encourage hiring at least a part-timer for now as a victim witness coordinator. That person could then use whatever extra time they may or may not have to collect fines. And then this summer, I'd recommend hiring an intern. There may be funding available if we get somebody from one of Iowa's law schools, from the University of Iowa or from Drake, to work in the office this summer if we don't get an undergrad. But that is also uncertain, because I'm not sure if those programs are currently going to be funded. Again, there's some uncertainty when it comes to both federal and to some lesser extent state funding for that. Bottom line, I'd say let's try and hire somebody part-time and see what we can do for getting an intern.
All right, gentlemen, considering the item before us, pay increase for county attorney's legal assistant, victim witness coordinator. Further discussion? We will be considering and reviewing the budgets further on. I think there's plenty within the attorney's office to consider at that time. Anything further? Was this item, I guess, the best I'm hearing is probably $2,000 beyond the 3.5% potentially. I'm not saying that's been decided, but they have not hearing an option above that floated to the table.
Let's make a deal. $1,000. I'll make a motion for $1,000 increase.
I have that motion before us. If there's interest in supporting it, we can take action on that specifically. We can address it in further detail with the overall attorney's budget during review later. Interest in support for the $1,000 motion by Helmers.
I'll support it.
Motion by Helmers, support from Loring. Discussion concerning the $1,000 increase beyond the 3.5 identified in the budget. Those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. The motion for $1,000 does not pass. Do you want to consider this
I'd make a
further
motion.
an alternate motion?
I'd make a motion for 2,000.
I'll support that.
We have a motion by Schulte, support from DeBoer for a $2,000 increase above the 3.5 identified in the budget. Any further discussion concerning that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval signify with aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
4-1 vote, motion passes. That will be reflected in the county attorney's budget then. Okay. Next is discuss county attorney job posting. That was specific about, do we just agree to advertise for a certain time period, or are we going to
It is,
extend that time period?
yeah, the deadline is coming up on the 12th, so that's tomorrow. So if we need to extend it or,
Any more come out of that phone call that you had, or that Rochelle had?
I'm not sure of any details of the phone call she had, sorry.
I'd say, yeah, extend it.
Anybody, get anybody?
Rochelle had a call
She
last
had-
week.
Yeah, she had one contact, but I don't know that she officially had any application or, the paperwork filed.
Had been one
to
that
my
sounded
knowledge.
like the interest changed when they realized it wasn't Osceola, Iowa.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
Osceola
And
County.
she had one
but-
after that.
Yeah, I think there's one after that, yeah.
So they thought it was in Clark County.
That's the one I was curious about.
Do we advertise for a specific time period or until the position is filled?
I'd say until the position is filled.
That's probably smart. I mean, it took neighboring county 6 months to get there. And also, Chandra, do you know if that posting is now active on the Iowa County Attorney Association website?
I know, I don't know if it's the Iowa County Attorney. Is there something through the Iowa Public? Is that the same thing?
No.
No,
So
it's
I had
different.
spoken
Okay.
with Rochelle, and I know that there was a posting on the Iowa State Association of Counties website.
Okay.
And I had mentioned that it would be a good idea to advertise it on the Iowa County Attorney Association website, because that's actually where I first heard of this opportunity to work on Osceola when I began here, when I applied here.
Iowa County Attorney Association.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at if you just Google it, you'll find it. And it's free, and it's a good hub for people to find things, find jobs, whether it's assistant county attorney postings, assistant attorney general ones,
Okay.
or county attorney jobs like this one.
Is that separate from the ISAC affiliate? Or is that the,
I think they're separate, yes. I think they're legally separate they are legally separate entities, because the ICAA works with the Attorney General's office and the prosecuting attorney training a coordinator office.
may I make a suggestion that we have a motion to continue reasonable postings until the position is filled? That's not tying us into advertising specifically in local papers, or it leaves it a little more open-ended, or is that not the approach we want to take?
I thought that's the way we were gonna go, just keep advertising, whether it be on the paper or the computer, till the job is full.
Okay. Is that a motion to continue with postings until
Yep.
the position is filled?
Support.
Motion by Schulte, support from Helmers to continue with county attorney job postings until the position is filled. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Discuss 28E agreement with Lyon County for Osceola County services. This has we have an agreement, I believe it was 2 months, correct?
I believe it was 3.
3 months?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. That would put us till the middle of April.
Yes, sir.
So do we have to change anything, or if we're good till the middle of April?
I don't believe you need to change anything. As I believe I mentioned before, but I will mention again, the Lion Board has given me instruction, has stated that they are open to me continuing or to act overall, total 6 months as interim county attorney, because they believe that was fair, because Osceola permitted me to be their interim for 6 months in various capacities. That would take us to the middle of July. What I would say is, I think that it is what it is in terms of how long it takes Osceola to find a new county attorney. And I am very open to continuing to help out here. I want to help Osceola out, and it has been and is my intention to not leave Osceola high and dry without a county attorney or having to scrape other counties to find somebody who's an assistant who is already busy to act as your interim. I know that all the counties that neighbor Osceola are quite busy. In Dickinson County, like I said, they went down from 3 attorneys in their office to 2. They have 2 veteran county attorneys who really know what they're doing, but they're busy, and they will be very busy in the summer months because that is the busy time in Dickinson. Clay County has an experienced and very good county attorney. Their assistant county attorney recently became a judge. They've managed to hire somebody who has some experience and is a experienced attorney, but that person is brand new, and I don't know that it would be fair to ask them to act as an assistant. O'Brien has a part-time county attorney who isn't really part-time in terms of just pure hours worked, I don't think. They have 2 assistant county attorneys, both of whom I believe are full-time. I won't speak for their status because I know it's changed, but I know they stay busy. And in Sioux County, they are understandably quite busy with a full-time county attorney and 2 full-time assistants. They do a good job, they're all experienced, but the reality is that the Sioux County Attorney's Board decided that it was time to end that arrangement with Lyon as interim in November, earlier than was probably anticipated. And I won't speak for any private discussions that were had, but I think the proof is kind of in the pudding in terms of what's available from Sioux County in terms of their board's willingness to lend a county attorney to Osceola. So I don't want to leave Osceola in a bad position. What I'll also say is that I know that it's a strain on the judges, the clerks, and the legal assistants in both offices to have me back and forth. So there is a possibility that at some point my board might just say, Nolan, I think it's probably time to conclude that agreement with Osceola. That conversation hasn't been had, and I haven't been told that, but I want to put that on the radar of the board and be open about that so that everybody's aware. I don't think there's going to be any problem with me serving at least until April. We can have a discussion as we get closer to April as to whether or not it would be feasible for me to extend it. The judges, clerks, and office staff are all aware of the possibility I may serve as interim here until July, and no one said, heck no, Nolan, that's not okay. But I think that subtly people would like it if I was just in one county, so I want to put that on your radar.
if we would find somebody that would be a part-time attorney but didn't live in the county,
Yeah.
could we do that? I thought if they weren't the primary one, I thought they could.
My understanding of the state law is that the part-time or full-time county attorney, if they are the appointed elected official, must live in the county at the time they are appointed.
The elected official, yes.
But what you could
But if
do,
you're making the position a part-time position, they would be
No,
the official.
We'd still keep going for a full-time
yeah,
county attorney. But if we have somebody that would just be willing to do a part-time,
if they're the appointed county attorney, they have to live in the county. But what you can do is potentially, if you find someone who is willing to take on some of the responsibilities of the county attorney position, appoint them as an interim and designate that they have responsibility for certain dockets within the court system, and then retain me for other certain dockets in the court system. So for instance, if you find somebody who's willing to serve as a part-time county attorney, they could then take control of or be designated to handle the juvenile court and magistrate dockets, or the criminal docket, add your mental health docket in there somewhere, right? And you could designate that I remain interim county attorney and they be interim assistant county attorney. Or you could reverse that. There's flexibility there. You could essentially split the interim county attorney duties as the board saw fit and most reasonable, but you would need to keep the interim title on that person. If they were an assistant county attorney or a county attorney serving in another county, you would need a 2080 agreement, an additional 2080 agreement for that person. If they're just a private attorney, that agreement would be a contract, essentially in the form of a formal offer that is accepted and then memorialized in an agreement between that person and the county. So you could have two interim attorneys working in the county attorney's office. You would need to decide who has the title interim county attorney and who has the title interim assistant county attorney, and designate what their areas of responsibility are. That's an option you have as well. So big picture, you can have two people doing the work of interim county attorney, but they can't be appointed county attorney even part-time if they don't live in the county, and you need to decide what they're responsible for and who holds the title interim county attorney versus assistant, because there can only be one county attorney, even if they're interim.
I just want to look at all our options.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
And the agreement has a 20-day notice to end the agreement if we don't see it out to the end of the upon length. But if there's no further is there any further discussion concerning that item? And the county attorney Nolan has asked for a closed session if we are to discuss, or if we're going to discuss his performance specifically relative to any portion of that agreement. That's why that was on there. Don't believe it's necessary. Anything else? We can move on to considering resolution 26, 24, 25.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Sorry, before we fully get into that in that closed session, Rochelle received something this morning from Ehlers and Cooney concerning a court opinion or a court ruling on closed sessions. And I had also asked Jack a few questions. There's a copy of his response there too, just for your consideration regarding that item. Okay, sorry, resolution 26, 24, 25. Chantry gave us lots of fun reading.
Oh, yeah.
I sure appreciated her reading it all and giving me the synopsis. What'd you guys think?
I was kind of waiting for a synopsis too.
She did not, I'm kidding.
I did not.
Yeah, right.
That's
You're
why I
just trying to get out.
specifically, when I sent it out, said it's 100 and some pages, so make sure you have enough time.
Okay, now I'll ask you, what were the high points?
I left that to you guys.
Interest in action on resolution 26.
I'll make a motion on 26, resolution 26.
I'll support that.
We have a motion by Schulte, support from Helmers for approval of resolution number 26, 24, 25, approving distribution of the preliminary official statement. Any further discussion concerning the motion for approval? Hearing none. Mr. Schulte, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Helmers? Mr. DeBoer?
Aye.
Mr. Loring? I vote aye. Consider approval or disapproval of family farm applications. See that? Have those there?
Yes. You want to go first? So, yeah.
What would that be, for like Century Farms or?
So, Eggland Family Farm is a credit that's offered from the state. So they have to have, in order to have family farm, you have to have egg land, and egg land you have to have a minimum of 10 acres of farm producing. I can't remember what it exactly says in code, but yeah, you're supposed to have the minimum of 10 acres, or if you don't have a minimum of 10 acres, it has to be conjoined or adjacent to a piece of land that does have a minimum of 10 acres, then you can apply for this family farm credit. And it doesn't amount to a lot, but I think it's like, I think Sharon has the numbers for sure, but it's like, I think the whole credit, the state gets a certain allotment and then it gets divvied out between. So it kind of, it doesn't really amount to a whole lot per parcel necessarily, but. So some of these applications. No, I
Did you hear that?
can't
The
tell
state
you that.
actually funds it?
Actually, these applications go to Sharon's, the assessor's office, and the assessor's office goes through and they check that stuff, and then they'll either allow or disallow. So when a parcel switches hands, so like if I owned a parcel and you bought it, it would switch from my name to your name. If I had family farm credit, because the tax season is behind a year or whatever, then you would get my credit for the first year. But then if you didn't return when it was actually your turn to get that credit, then it would be removed. So some of these applications, you can see when you go through them that they don't have any landowner signature. In that case, then the credit is removed. So, and then some of them, if they've gotten calls or whatever says, oh, family doesn't farm that anymore, so you can remove that credit or whatever. So
if somebody had the farm and they rented it out, could they get it?
It has, if it's rented out to family, and family is only, can't remember what's all allowed as far as family goes, but if it's family, then they can get it for the most part, yes. But if it's not family, then no.
Could I adopt them?
These are assessor questions. They take care of these applications. I just do the removing or adding, if we have any. And then the ones that are that they've gotten the credit, the claimant then, if the credit is removed, the claimant will receive a letter and then be on the behalf of the Board of Supervisors according to code. So.
There's some tagged in there. What was the reason for that?
The ones that I have the stickers on the side, those are the ones that I didn't have proof read sheets. Is for my balancing at the end because I need to balance how many credits I removed and how many I added to make sure all my reports come out right. So,
So the times I changed, you might have to find them.
yeah. You would be difficult like that, wouldn't you?
No. Haven't found Rochelle, or haven't talked to Rochelle's mom yet.
They have not gotten a hold of her yet.
You're a speed reader too.
I've heard of it, so.
I've got a friend, he's a speed reader, and I don't see how he can retain that. He can sit there and just flip the page, and that just baffles me. He can pretty much tell you what's on that page.
I read slow and don't always retain it.
Yeah. He reads contracts that way. Your DOT testing, I see a Unity Point. Do you have to send them any special place for Unity Point?
Oh, that's for the drug testing.
Yeah,
We use the chiropractor here in town.
yeah. And I see another bill from
That's
you.
that's the lab. So
Oh,
we pay the
okay.
chiropractor here in town. I asked that same question. We pay the chiropractor here in town, and we pay the lab separately.
So I was just sitting there trying to put Unity Point in with it, and I thought, I see T-Mobile. Are you happy with T-Mobile?
We have coverage that we need, our hotspots out in the field work for our construction projects, so it's done all right for us.
I've got Verizon, and there's times I'm kind of disappointed in them.
I think there's times on every, I don't care who you got.
You're probably right.
Share towers, so.
Yeah.
This will work better if you're hardworking.
Well, then mine should
That's
work
it.
really good.
Oh, okay.
You questioned that?
Interested in action on these, gentlemen?
Make a motion for approval of the family farm applications. Second.
Motion for approval by Helmers, support from Loring. Further discussion on the family farm applications? Hearing none. Those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. So approval of the county 5-year plan amendment.
Thank you. So the 5-year plan is required by the DOT, showing all of our major capital projects going out 5 years. Approved with the budget, so we'll be approving a FY26 version of that in the next couple weeks. But this version is asked for an amendment to add 3 projects, which are basically the major FEMA projects. So we've got the bridge washout down by Poet, and then we had 2 locations where we had rows of pipe culverts that were washed out, and we're replacing them with box culverts. So to be able to let those projects and show the DOT that type of expenditure, we're adding them to the 5-year plan. It's really just a matter of adding expenditure authority. There will be a budget amendment coming up. I don't know if we'll do that in June when we do kind of all of our budget amendments, or if we'll take that a little earlier. But eventually we'll be putting these projects in a budget amendment as well, along with the anticipated revenue from FEMA and the state. So it's fairly basic amendment at this point, just adding an unforeseen projects to get expenditure authority.
Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, we do need approval by the board.
I'll make a motion to approve that 5-year plan.
Second it.
A motion by Schulte, support from DeBoer for approval of the county 5-year plan amendment. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval signify with aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. You have your approval.
Thank you. I'll go down and print a final copy for signature.
Okay.
And right back in case there's any more questions on claims or budgets. I can
Further budget review. We tabbed through each of these. Are there any departments that we may have discrepancies on that we would want to take action on? Individual department review. Anything on ambulance that?
That one, I think we're gonna end up with a budget amendment, because if we get somebody hired to be alongside Sandy, we're gonna have to up that a little bit. And then on the EMA, we're gonna have a little argument there, because they wanna hire full-time and I don't want to.
Well, I think either the one that applied or Jason's idea is the way you should go.
They gave no discussion to that at the meeting the other night, so I think it's a last ditch effort, or it's a
combining?
Only under circumstance where we don't have an applicant or don't have somebody they want to hire. I don't think they're giving any consideration to using that approach. Now, they didn't talk about it a lick,
Which approach are you talking about?
the sharing for a time here at least as we transition, but
Well, he is gonna be our interim from O'Brien.
Yeah, that's. Did they say they had any applicants?
there was one in and one other was going to be submitting it this week. I think the second one was more interested in the full-time, is what impression I have. That's not official, but.
That is the right one, and I won't vote for that. And if they think they can run that through, they're gonna have to find a way to fund it.
Well, that's kind of what they told me. The chairman told me. You don't have any say.
And they've gotta find a way to fund it, because I'm not helping
That's
us.
kind of what I said. And I don't know anything about public safety till Wednesday. We'll see if they, I'm gonna run that approach by them, and I feel good about it though. I think they'll, maybe not, but I feel good about that approach, and I think they'll go for it, but we'll see.
And as we've gone through everything else, I'm less concerned about needing to use it as I was initially, but I still think it's
exactly.
worth considering. So I appreciate you bringing that. County Attorney's Office, do we want to? Well, I'm not gonna ask if we want to. Should we spend a little more time on that overall office? We've addressed the.
My feeling, I don't like the timing of her asking for more money. It's just like they've got her back against the wall.
I don't understand why they didn't include it in the budget.
Yeah.
And then make that push, but apart from that, yeah, we've addressed that line. Where do we want to come down on the attorney salary come July 1? And are we wanting to consider funding for a part-time or intern approach to kind of evaluate what the long-term needs or approach to that office would be?
I'd like to raise the salary for the county attorney. Because I don't think we're gonna get any applicants where we're at, or even close to where we're at.
I believe that call Rochelle received, and she would verify, I guess, if she were here, but
sorry.
I thought she said it was asked what the salary would be July 1, and she said no action had been taken, that it was where it was at currently, but shared my thoughts. Mike has given an indication too. You're thinking where?
I'd like to be in the 130s.
30s,
30s, someplace in there.
so 39 or 31.
Whatever we have to get somebody.
35.
I believe Dickinson's at 140, and the only indicated line would be going to 131 starting July. I'd be content around 128, 129. Maybe one, I'm not ruling out the 30s, but I say that, then Jerry says, let's make a deal, and I go half of where I wanted to be.
I'll say 140.
No, I have actually.
But
I agree, we're gonna have to raise it.
Then you might come back, no, get more than over there. Up to 30s.
I would consider 130.
Jeff, Leroy,
Yep, I would agree.
pencil in 130 there. Any interest or thought to put some in the budget for a potential part-time or intern position? Quick calculator, I was thinking 28,000, that's right at, it's almost $27 an hour if you're at 20 hours a week. That seems pretty reasonable to me, and if you could get.
I don't think we should put it in the budget, but that's just my opinion.
I would like to have something, I would like to have a part-timer in there, just in case, say one walks out, you've got somebody to cover.
And to that point, Jerry, my thought would be that the funding would be allocated, but I'd wait to see what a new attorney would weigh in on. And I'm not saying advertise now or start it, but.
You wanna put it in the budget?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind putting like, just say 25 in there for in case we find somebody.
I wouldn't count on any grants coming down the pipe.
Oh,
It's probably
Maybe, I hope I'm wrong.
yeah,
I
I don't foresee it.
Whatever you think, whatever figure you think, I guess.
And so then 25K.
Yep. It's okay with me.
There's been a fair amount discussed on that. Would anybody be willing to make a motion to approve that departmental budget as a whole? That would include the 130,000 for attorney, 25,000 for a potential intern or part-time position, the 50,460, which is 2,000 above the 3.5 shown for the legal assistant.
I'll make that motion.
There is a motion by Schulte to approve or proceed with the county attorney's department budget as discussed. Is there support for that? Support from Loring. Any further discussion on those items? Do you want me to restate them or we understand? All those in favor of that department budget signify with aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Conservation, I don't think there was much. I don't really advocate for changing anything. I did talk to Nick about possibly using that that rent that we often pass to land acquisition. If we could reallot that or allocate that to support the jail project. He said that he wouldn't be opposed to it, but he would want some assurances that it be refunded in the future. I even pushed back a little bit. What about we just pause it for a couple of years, but it does come back in the future? He didn't like that idea, but I don't know that it's worth pushing. That is a thought I'd had, and I think I'm fairly content with what we've penciled in for.
They've been doing a pretty good job out there. They've gotten, what am I going to say, more thrifty, and they're watching their bottom line a little better, so I give them the benefit of the doubt, so.
Rake the engineer over the coals as I go down the list here, or?
Numbers in there.
I had asked a couple questions on just some of the percentages, didn't follow the 3.5, and he provided a good response on just how he reallocated some stuff, and he figured some additional hours towards an inspection work that would not carry the same hourly rate, but the 3.5% increase on wages was used across the board.
And Nick does that to a certain extent too, so.
I disagree with what Nick does with the raises.
I liked it initially. I don't know that I like it as a long-term
It's gonna bite in the long run.
approach, but I wish it would be used occasionally, not consistently, but.
Oh, yeah, a lot of it was pretty simple from there on. Except for Chantry's, that one was kind of questionable.
Largely, that would just kind of leave public safety as to what might change things.
Yeah.
Anything else that you gentlemen would want to address?
If there's a figure that you want for a line item in that, what figure would you put? A line item for jail, in public safety's budget.
Jail, that's gonna be a guess by gosh.
Well, just like anything, we can put that figure in there, we don't have to use it, but do you want 100, do you want 150, do you want? What are you thinking?
It's a good question. I don't know that I put a number there, but. When I went through kind of line by line and looked at what was tended to be to not utilize the full budgeted amount, I think I came up with around 60 to 70,000 that pretty consistently didn't get used. We're kind of hitting break even basically with the funding level we're at and what the budget's been requiring. And yeah, here they show.
My thought was just 100,000, but
That had kind of
Yeah.
banged around in my head too.
so that's unless you're more.
Works good.
If you want a point to move on, if you start at 100 and then just looking at their budget for this year, it's increased 58,130. So we're basically running flush now, and they show an increase. If we say let's do 60 then, because then where we're at is pretty much carrying its weight,
Yep.
and we're contributing to it. So that might be worth
Okay.
somewhere to move on. Just a couple thoughts. Then start at 120 so you can split the difference and be at 60.
Make it
Alright. If there's anything too much beyond that, that you guys want specifically addressed, as we have claims on our agenda to address yet. Comfortable with budgets? If you have a specific question, we'll get one out. There's a claim for Bosma Water Service, number 1299.
Make a motion to pay the bottom 1299. Is that what it was?
Yep.
Second.
Abstain. Any further discussion on that claim? Hearing none, those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. I abstain.
You probably can't answer this, Andrew, but leaking faucet in the jail. There's $1,100. Do they have to come in, sink in or something?
You're right, I do not know the answer to that.
You could find the claim, with the claim, couldn't you?
Maybe. Maybe could.
Just seems like an awful lot for a leaking faucet. I'm not in the plumbing business, so those guys do make a lot of money.
I've heard some of them do. Did you get the,
That's all right.
you're thinking claim 1302?
Okay, maybe that will help me.
I'm sure it's told you.
I would guess a lot of that is actually the material, the part.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting reimbursed for fuel too. I used my Costco card to activate the pump, and then as I always do, I just hit charge that card and I didn't bother swiping the county card. Darn it.
More than a leaky faucet.
Whatever an acorn air control valve is, that was what was expensive. I don't know what that is, but.
We got some. Yesterday.
Michelle, what was something?
Because her mom was awake, but not acting right, so she's bringing her in. Yeah, so, thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
I make a motion to pay the rest of the claims.
I'm second it.
Motion by Helmer, support from DeBoer for approval of the remainder of the claims. I'll take a look at it. Change. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We have claims approved. Anything under other business?
If you ever get a chance, Willow Creek have Nick show you the new cabin. It is really nice, isn't it? It's neat.
Here's the deal for disaster recovery if you want to look that over.
Jared from O'Brien County had pointed out EMS that as individuals file taxes, if they had losses from flooding and stuff like that that weren't covered by insurance or get.
So that's kind of what this
Put
is.
some, put out some good information that I think wasn't, Chantry, weren't you guys getting it on the website?
Yeah, it's on the website and I forwarded it to all the city personnel and the fire chief in May City, so they're supposed to be helping distribute it.
Good. I will look into kind of putting in an application to be on the advisory board for the new approach with the mental health ASOs. I think it's highly unlikely, but especially since our CO won't be in the district that we're in, but we'll try.
They're changing in districts on that, early childhood deal I go to in Harley.
That's being altered too?
I don't know when, but whether the 4 counties will stay together, look like they split it up at Osceola Dixon. Moved District 1 all the way to the south. I don't know what's gonna happen there.
Jason, did you go to the EMS meeting, or how did you?
Yeah, I did go the other night, because I had talked to John ahead of time and wondered if they would discuss Jandy at all. And Well, it was-
How's the crop damage work on that drainage district over there, like for 25 or 26? Like, 'cause, the one guy ranch, he said he won't get nothing for over there for 2 years.
Well, I think they're gonna discuss that, aren't they, for 2025 crop year?
Yeah, that's okay.
He's not happy with it. I didn't know how that worked.
I'm not familiar now. Why would that be? I could see where there would certainly be yield reductions, but why wouldn't it?
Well,
grow?
number one, part of that area where he's in is the part that they'll have to reshape that this spring, so there won't be anything done,
Really gets wet,
you know.
some of that.
Probably, I don't know if he'll get a crop in there this year or not, because that's where they gotta do all the work down on that end. And they tore out some trees and stuff, and his,
He said he just did that the other day, finished tearing them out.
did they?
He did,
Oh,
farmer.
that rash, yeah. So there will be on that bottom end, there'll be some definite.
He was asking me about it, I said, I have no idea, but.
Okay, you gotta figure about a 3-year crop reduction.
Well, I don't know about 3 years, but,
That's what I'd always heard.
and there'll maybe be a little reduction, but because they're gonna be on that this spring, I think there will be some crop damage. You know what I'm saying? They won't get that level off timely, and then there'll be some compaction and stuff, so. That's in about the last, half mile, huh? Have you looked at that or not?
Well, I've been out there for a while.
Yeah.
Familiar with the area.
Yeah. I thought they were gonna discuss that. The last time we had a meeting, I talked about that 2025.
Didn't
I
Spencer,
think he
they've
called
got a
that
request.
liquidated damages, didn't he?
No, I think that's factored into the 24 growing season, but 25, he's asking for, I think they've requested information from farmers as to what ground might still be impacted, or, because 25 wasn't factored into the original
Yeah.
figures.
Because I think that towards that bottom, and I think Joe Hibman farms that down stream from Gratiot.
Yeah.
And that whole half mile or quarter mile, whatever that is in there, will have to probably be reshaped. Because the flooding reshaped that, and that was part of the deal, they didn't come back and
That was pretty
fix.
much the waterway there anyway.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I just wondered how it worked. If I would see him and he'd ask me again. He'd probably be better off than talking to Spencer.
I would
Yeah.
encourage him to talk to ISG and Spencer and express those concerns, or.
Scott called me on that same thing.
And you get about the shortest stretch.
Yeah, he's just got a whole stretch, but it's still kind of, it's not right, so.
All right. You interested in moving on the last item on the agenda to adjourn?
Sure, I can do that.
Second.
Motion by Loring, support from DeBoer for adjournment. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
What do we got on the agenda
Did
coming
you
up?
get one or you
Couldn't get it
Next
here.
Tuesday?
I'm gonna see if I can delete the cache in the
8 o'clock.
browser and not have to call or
Assessor, yeah, okay.
8 o'clock,
I'll get
8 o'clock, we're taking action on the borrowing,
the auditor's book page.
the formal borrowing of the
That's what
For the
bond.
5-year plan?
And then 8:30 is the conference board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I will be on the phone for that if you'll run the meeting, Jerry.
Okay. I have to run the meeting?